Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of BEaTS Research Radio at the stream from University of Ottawa Higher Institute originally, but this episode we're streaming from my home office. Remember, people, stay healthy, stay safe, keep your distance, and social distances is good. So today's episode is going to be dedicated to the University of Ottawa Early Research Award from 2019 with Professor Ebrahim Karimi from the University of Ottawa. Professor Karimi has many awards and has been worldwide recognized by his contribution to light. And today we're going to learn more about that. But just let me give you a little bit of introduction of what Professor Karimi's background. He declared himself that he fell in love with mathematics and physics when he was, in high school. So he pursued a degree in Bachelor in Physics with emphasis in mathematics from Kerman University in 2001. Then he decided to pursue graduate students in the fields of mathematics and physics, and he was highly ranked in 18th with this incoming students that year. So, but he later changed his research to a little bit more of in the area of lasers. That was something we're going to discuss today. And in 2002, he moved to this new research area. He also worked in singular optics and many other fields related to light. And in 2009, he received his PhD degree from the University of Naples in Federico II. He was awarded with the best thesis for that year with a really intriguing title. I hope we will learn a little bit about that today, is Light Orbital Angular Momentum and his application on the classical and quantum information. Then he pursued a postdoctoral fellowship under the FED project with Professor Lorenzo Marucci and Professor Robert Boyd, another big name in the field of light in worldwide. 2000 and later, briefly after that, we were lucky enough of having Professor Karimi to be recruited at the University of Ottawa, where he holds a kind of research in the field of structural light. And he has his own group, of course, which is the Structural Quantum Optics Group at the University of Ottawa. As I said previously, Professor Karimi has received many awards, and he's a visiting professor and, for example, at Max Planck Institute, and also an adjunct professor at ISBS in Iran. And he's also an associate editor of Optics Express and a New Journal of Physics, two top journals in the area of physics and optics. And he has received many awards, apart from the one that I received last year from University of Ottawa, including Ontario's Early Research Award in 2018. He was the Young Researcher of the Year in 2018 for the Faculty of Science. He is a Fellow of the Optical Society, and is a member of the Global Young Academy, and also a Fellow of the Max Planck Institute for the Science of Light. So all these awards are kind of important, for the career of any scientist, but Professor Karimi is also recognized by his students and peers as someone really generous. And today is truly a privilege of having him today with us. And before he says hello to us, I'm going to ask him the first question. And how do you become a scientist?
Hello. First of all, thank you very much, Emilio, for having me and inviting me for this interview. I do really appreciate that. Thank you. And of course, I followed other interviews and other episodes on your website, and I find them very interesting and useful for young generation. I would say specifically. So you asked me a question: how I become a scientist. I would say this is not a straightforward question to be answered. But let me bring you back to the time that I was a child. So it looked like a puzzle. It looked like a maze that you go gradually. You find your way, and then you end up to be a scientist. So when I was a child, I remember I visited the workshop of my father when I was at the age of 4 and 5, and at that time I was very amazed how he can work with tools, he can work with cars and engines and many other things. And he started to explain all of those stuff to me. And sometimes I asked him, I'm sure, many stupid questions. And then he guided me to his colleagues to explain those questions to me. I mean, and answer those questions to me. So I would say starting from that time, I was curious to understand how things works. Okay, I wouldn't say that I become scientist from the very early, but is, as I say, is a step. Is many steps that you go and you follow and you end up in a certain point. Then when I was in a primary school, I can explain to you how I got also fascinated about light when I had my thumb and index finger and closing to each other and looking through some places, I see some regions appears like a dark and bright regions, and I thought that I have special talent and my eyes is powerful and I can see these effects, or I can see bending of light around my finger. And when I was sharing these things with my classmates, they say, "Oh, yeah, we do see as well." So I got very interested about those things at that time. Then we played a lot with mirrors. I had a watch always having sunlight on your watch, and you try to guide the reflection on the roof. Or we had a pencil or a pen which was made of plastic, and we see the spectrum if the sunlight was going through it, and then you see the rainbow color if you want to call it. So from the beginning, I was really interested to know and playing with nature, and that was I would say the main power behind becoming a scientist. When I went to high school, uh, which maybe we will discuss it later. When I was in high school, also with my colleagues, my classmates and friends, we spent days, weeks to do some I would say basic research there, even at that time. So, for example, I remember we recorded shadow of a pencil for almost a year. And from this shadow, we were able to calculate what is the distance between the Earth and the Sun. Or we spent weeks in laboratory just to play with lasers. At that time, we had a very we were lucky that we could get a laser pointer and we could play with it, and many other things. So it's I would say is really a maze which you go through one by one. You hit the boundary, and then you come back and you find your route gradually, and you ended up here.
Well, it's really inspiring. That intrinsic curiosity for natural phenomena is something that it seems to be across the border for many scientists, right? So, and it's particularly light. I think that I can see that light was always a part of your interest and passion for science. But speaking about that when we reach a maturity level and we all have a motto like a driven force for science, which will be yours? What do you think is yours? Like, what is driving you to do the amazing science you're doing in light?
Curiosity, curiosity, and curiosity. Nothing more than that.
Okay.
This is the power behind. I I do really enjoy when I find a puzzle. I'm I'm daily, day and night. I'm working on this just to find out the answer. And this is something that you need to be passionate about. And curiosity is the only element, I would say. Uh, I'm always thirsty about learning. If I want to coach someone, I would say that Steve Jobs that say always stay hungry, stay foolish. So if you really want to learn, you should be curious in science, of course, and you should really enjoy what you are doing, and that's extremely important.
That's that's true, right? So we all have a curiosity that's intrinsic to human nature, but when you put all that in science, you never stop at this amazing yourself of discovering something new every day. That is what keep us running. And you were awarded this year for the 2019 Early Career Research Award from University of Ottawa, one of the highest distinctions we have within the university. And you and me, we share something that we weren't born in Canada, but we call Canada our home now. What does it mean to you, like in terms of receiving this recognition from the university?
So let me go first with your last statement. So yes, I was born in Kurdistan in Iran. Okay, and of course, I mean, we do have Kurdish people. We do have a lot of issues, a lot of problems to be recognized by many states and many different places, including Iran. So I was not even sure that I will have a permission to study in academia. So there were no guarantee. I mean, many of my friends, they couldn't because they couldn't pass the security screening. So I was among the luckiest one that I could go to university in Iran, and later on going to Italy, and then coming to Canada. When I came to Canada, it was so welcoming, and I remember very well the day that officer she said to us, "We are very proud to have you and your wife in Canada." So, as you say, Canada is my home, and is an exceptional country. I would say is by many factors is a unique one. So when I came to Canada, it was a dream to become a professor at the university, and I fought for this. I did a lot of efforts, and nothing comes for free. By the way, you should put a lot of efforts in reaching to your goals. Okay, you have resolution, and then you try a lot to reach to those resolution and getting what you aim for. So I tried a lot, and I'm not alone. We are a group. We are a group of people, and including my students, members of my team, postdocs, external collaborators. As you mentioned, some of them like Germany, Italy, and also other different countries, Israel, Iran. Which all of us, we try very hard to reach to certain goals and pushing the borders of science a little bit. And this recognition, this award by university, is for all of us. It's not only for me, it's for the entire of the group, and of course I share with them. It means a lot to us. It means that yes, what we are doing is right and is in the right direction. So we are truly honored to receive this.
This is really what science is about, like collaborating, mentoring people, seeing how they grow. And it's really rewarding. And the feeling that you have of finding a place where we really belong, when we can be with what we are, right? And achieving our goals and really having a system that is helping us is truly what Canada is to many of us, that we weren't born here, but we call Canada our place. And also the awards that like awards are awards, but the most important thing is certainly having that community sense of we are doing science for everyone, and science doesn't know about ethnicity, religion, or where you're coming from, but it's about helping and giving back to your communities. And I think that is your research really embodies that, and thank you again. And you mentioned that you moved from Iran. You were fortunate of having receiving university education, and then you went to Italy, and from Italy you came to Canada, and that is a long path for many people, but for many of us it's just life, right? But in all these steps, we came across with mentors, with people that are really changing our lives. What is your experience in that sense, and what will be a tip for the young investigators or the young researchers that just starting their career about mentorship? How important is mentorship, do you think?
Oh, extremely important. So if uh, let me give you an example. I was not good in physics and math, in explicitly saying physics at the first year of high school. Okay, and I remember very well that we got three brilliant teachers at that time, which motivated all of the students, and they changed our life. So if I want to say yes, they were my mentor, and still I will say that those are the main mentors in my life, and they really changed my life and the life of many other students. They were available, first of all, and apart from being available, they give the confidence and they trusted to all students. So with techniques of, let's say, giving you puzzles and giving you rewards, they were able to convey a lot of new concept to us. You can't believe that if I say to many of my colleagues, they couldn't believe this. I learned group theory and complex algebra in the first year and second year of high school. So they were those guys that really helped us. So yes, mentors are extremely important. You should choose the right mentor. Those people that they trust you, they believe in you, and they can guide you when you need them. There are many times in your life, it happens a lot that you don't have a confidence, or you are not sure, you are not certain about certain works, what will be the action that you should do. So this is the place that your mentor really can help.
It's it's true, like people tend to think that scientists, they were born scientists, but most of the time we're just normal people that we were lucky enough of finding that right person that to really mentor you and push you and show you the path, because the mentor is supposed to just show you the path, and you should be able
Right.
to take it or not. That is a really a nice way to put it. Thank you. So we're gonna take a brief break now. So when we're back, we're gonna learn more about your research and about light. I have many questions about light, including the dual particle, wave, mysterious, behavioral light. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to BEaTS Research Radio. Today's episode is with Dr. Karimi from University of Ottawa. Dr. Karimi was telling us about his career, like how he started, science, and at really early age, and all the path to coming to Canada and to becoming a professor at University of Ottawa. And in the second part, we're gonna now discuss about specific research he's doing. I'm a photochemist, as you know, but I'm a chemist with using light instead of temperature. But my knowledge in light is quite limited, to be honest with you. So I'm quite intrigued about learning about your research in light. But the question I'm going to ask you first is if you can try to explain us how actually we can have photons. They have no mass, and they can behave sometimes as a wave, another time as a particle.
Yeah, that's very, I would say, interesting question. I mean, that scientists usually they ask. So we don't know. Okay, let me just put it in this way. We don't know. We are dealing with a wave packet, which has both feature of particle and wave in the same time. Okay, so let's go first with how can we have light which has no mass. Okay, I will give you an explanation that Newton uh, uh, Newton gave in 17th century. Assuming that you are throwing away stones, okay, you take a stone, you throw it away. You have a parabolic trajectory and it comes back to the earth, right? You throw it away, it comes back to the ground. So what you can do, you can keep the force the same. You can throw it at different stones. And if the stones become smaller and smaller and smaller, you will see that it takes longer time to come back to the ground. So, and this trajectory becomes almost straight when the mass is going to be zero. So when that stone becomes extremely small. Okay, so that's an explanation that photon has no rest mass, if I want to use technical words. So essentially is a tiny particle, a tiny object which has a mass which is zero. If you keep it in your hand, it will be zero. Of course, it has an effective mass which comes from relativity, which I don't want to touch it. And it has very interesting property. So we are very familiar with light. So light is one of the essential elements to have life on the earth. Okay, so without the sun, we cannot survive. So we daily interact with light. So if I want to explain to you, it looks like a troop, and inside of a troop you have individual soldier, and that's what we call it quanta of light. So light is looked like a troop, and the quanta that we are talking about is those individual soldiers. So when we are looking at a faint star during night, at each second we receive almost 10 of those soldiers to our eyes, and we can see that star. So we call these photon. And photon has a property that you cannot split a photon. It's a quanta. You can never break it down to half photon, 1/4 photon, and etc. Okay, and that is what we call it the quantum regime. So you will see the quanta of these, and all of those wave particle duality that happens at that quanta level. So if I create a single photon, one of those individual soldiers, and if I send them through a pinhole, if I send it through the double slit, double door, let's call it, okay? This, if you don't want to watch what is going on with this photon, with this soldier, it has the ability to pass both of them at the same time, which is very surprising. It becomes look like a wave. So if I want to tell you how do I see this word? I will make you an example. So it looks like having a piece of a paper. You bend it, you make a cylinder, okay? And now I'm asking you, what is this? You can say it's a rectangular shape, right? If I want to show it from this side, what you will see a circle. What is this? Is it circle or is it rectangular? Is both in the same time and is none in the same time. So this is what we call it photon, and we call it wave packet. So at the same time is wave and particle, and at the same time is none of them. Is something else which we call it wave packet. And this is looks like something that is beyond our understanding, I mean daily understanding. When you try to detect light, you deal with particle behavior. You see it as a particle. When you let the light to be propagated, then you see it as a wave. So these I try to answer to your question about wave particle duality, which is a puzzle in the community. Yeah.
No, it's a really excellent explanation that comes from the photochemist, and it is a really good explanation. I think that I'm gonna pass it along to my colleagues, and I'm gonna send the video. It's really great. So you mentioned quantum. You know, we have heard a lot about quantum communication and quantum computing. This has directly implications on that, right?
Yes. Yes, indeed. So let me tell you. I mean, quantum computations. I mean, if I want to say quantum technologies. So when we talk about quantum technologies, mainly we are talking about 4 different areas. One of them is, as you mentioned, is quantum communication. Building up a communication system or communication network, which essentially no one can eavesdrop the information. No one can interrupt and get the information. Anyone that is online and trying to get the information will be revealed to those parties that they want to do the communication. Okay, so that's quantum communication, we call it. The other one is quantum sensing. So if you want to detect something, like, I don't know, an object, either you should use light, or you should use electrons, or you should use some sensing element. And if you use quantum technologies, you can beat any classical sensing system. So you can enhance the resolution, or you can enhance the detection system. Okay, so this is another way that quantum technologies can be used in the sensing and detecting system. If I want to give you an example, which people in biology, they use it. So always we want to try to detect cells. We want to detect proteins. So, and we know that proteins and cells, they are extremely fragile. So if you want to get those information, you have to eliminate them with light, or you have to eliminate them with electrons in electron microscope. And those have, if you want to get better resolution, you have to go to higher energy, what we call it shorter wavelength. And if you go to that regime, you will destroy them, because they have a lot of energy, and they dispose this energy to the protein and to the cells, and you will kill them. There are techniques that you can use in quantum technologies, which you can detect those objects without destroying them. And then it comes what we call it quantum simulators. You want to build up a simulators which you can solve a puzzle. You can use, again, quantum technologies, and you can simulate this, or quantum computations. So you can build up a device which in the same time can be in a 0 and 1 of bits, so the bit of information. And in the same time, you can process many computations in the same, and then the speed will be enhanced a lot. Okay, so this is how quantum technologies can be used. And when you talk about quantum communication, you have no choice but using light, because light does not interact easily. Okay, you cannot use electron for communication because electron has a charge and it's easily get affected by other objects, by any object that we have in a lot, because also it has a mass and also charge. But when you talk about communication, we know very well that you have to deal with electromagnetic waves, which is essentially photons, and then you will go and you will build up your quantum communication with that. Of course, there are a lot of other elements like quantum memory and other stuff.
So when this is really informative, because we keep hearing about the need of these quantum computers for developing artificial intelligence and quantum technologies for really integrating this. But I think all this is connected because of the flexibility you can have, because you have one state or two states or nothing. So you can have it's at the same time it's everything but nothing, right? So you have more flexibility in the processing of the information, and you can have multiple processes running at the same time and stuff like that. And it's quite fascinating. I mean, light is everything. The other question I have is that you work on a structured light. Is that correct, right? So
right.
What does it mean? I mean, for the general public, including researchers that are not the experts in the area.
Yeah, so usually if I want to explain this to people, I would say that I use food as an example. Okay, so you have a meal, and the first thing that I'm asking you, can you describe this meal to me? You say, okay, smell, it smells good, is one of the description that you will give. The taste is fantastic. So, and then you can say even color is very fancy color or very exciting color. So it's reddish, I don't know, white or whatever. So this is the element. If I want to ask you without seeing by myself, I'm asking you to describe something for me. You will do, and you will use them and explaining to me. Light also is in a similar way. So you can describe those photons or quantas to me by explaining those properties, which we call them degrees of freedom. You can say to me that this light has a certain color. Of course, color is not the right word, but usually technical word we use it is a wavelength. You can say to me that the color is red, but physicists, they love to label them with numbers. So you can say, oh, the wavelength is 632.1 nanometer. Okay, is a number, of course, but it's associated to, let's say, a bright red. You can say, no, is 800 nanometers, then it's associated to what you call it very dark red. Okay, or you can say it is 500 nanometer, which is green, or it's 400 nanometer, which is blue, and etc. Of course, our vision is limited in certain way, but you can assign those numbers to that. So this is one property that you can explain to me. You can say the taste is fantastic, and taste for me is, as you mentioned in the first part, is orbital angular momentum. How those light can rotate objects. If I let those light to interact with an object, can they rotate faster or slower, clockwise or counterclockwise? And that is another property for me. So in my field, we deal with all of those individual properties of the light. Okay, and we manipulate them together. We make devices that you can control all of those individual degrees of freedom or detect them. And I can tell you why we care about those. Assuming that you want to send a message, or you want to send a car from Ottawa to Toronto, right? Of course, you can send a car. You can keep one person as a driver inside and send that car to Toronto. At the end, how many people are transported from Ottawa to Toronto? Only single person. But if you know your car, if you can design it properly, you can have another second passenger inside and sending to Toronto. You can add the third passenger, fourth, fifth, sixth, and even 100 passengers inside of the same car and sending there. This is what we do. We understand how many different degrees of freedom we do have with photons, and then we use all of those elements to encode information. And instead of sending only one signal, we can only sending one bit of information, we can send 100 bit of information. We can send thousands bit of information. This is what we call it structured light, because we are using the power of those individual parameters.
So basically, what you're doing, you're mapping the system. You're understanding all the variables in there, and using that for carrying more information, hundreds of times more information using light, because light is the one that, from we're using fiber optics or something like that just to packet the information. Is that correct?
Yes, indeed. Indeed, we use all of those different degrees of freedom, and essentially, in principle, they are unbounded. So if you know very well, you can send almost infinity number. Of course, infinity is in mathematics, but
Yeah.
in reality, of course, there are some bounds that are dictated by your detection system and generating system. Okay, generation system.
Oh wow. So
Yes, we can use fibers or we can use free space. For example, right now at University of Ottawa, between National Research Council of Canada in Montreal Road and University of Ottawa, we have two buildings that we are sending information in free space.
so do you have like a laser shooting?
Is the laser is there, but laser is not shoot through the air.
Okay.
Is a single photon that is sent there, so is really really faint, and I can explain to you how this is important and why this is secure and many other things that of course I don't know the timing that we do have. Yeah.
So, but I'm really intrigued now with knowing that we have two single photons traveling around around town. But basically, I mean, I'm imagining in there that you are testing how secure is used to transfer the information and how much of the information is really collected by the sensor, right? And but
Yes.
the implications of that is that tremendous. I mean, we rely on fiber optics, we rely on cables for moving information. The internet goes from one continent to another just packing this big cable which is under the ocean, right, in the bottom of the ocean. But the implications of what you guys are doing is tremendous, because in the future we'll be able to send the information used by shooting photons from one side to another. Is that
Yeah.
correct?
Yes. So let me tell you a little bit about the quantum communication. So assuming that we are talking to each other, right? This is a classical communication.
Yeah.
What is happening if someone is interrupting our communication? We hear noises, right?
Mm-hmm.
This is the first sign that someone is interrupting you. You hear echoes, or you can say interruptions, and etc. So it's some sort of noises that you have in the system. When you go to quantum, when you go to the quanta, what is happening? This noise is comparable to the signal. Okay? By monitoring the noise, you can understand if someone is interrupting you or not. This is what we do in the quantum level. So we use single photons, and sometimes we sacrifice some of those single photons and understand if whether those with single photons they have the right information or not. And then we understand if someone is interrupting our communication or not. Okay? So when we use fiber they have loss. Okay? When you send signals in such a, let's say, single photon quantas and etc., when you send them, after a certain distance, you will see that there is essentially no signal coming out of the fiber. It's all noise. So when you go to a distance higher than almost 200 kilometers, you cannot use fibers for quantum communication. What you have to do, you have to go with different approach. Either you can have a repeater, which many people they are working on quantum repeaters, or what you can do, you can use communication with satellite. So you send the signal to satellite, and from the satellite you can share it with another parties. This is what people they do. And you are right, many objects, they are not fixed, they are moving around like planes, okay, like drones, like satellite. So you have to do the communication via free space link. And then also the benefit is that you can go to much longer range. And we know very well that Canada is located like this. So it means that if I want to have a communication, let's say from Ottawa, Toronto, Waterloo to Calgary, then I have to go through satellite way. Okay. Yes, and also we are working with entanglement, which I'm sure that you heard of these quantum entanglement, and we are sharing those keys between different parties as well.
This is truly, like international, collaborations, and I can picture and with many fields, it's a good example of interdisciplinarity put to work, because people tend to think that, we have interdisciplinarity only in medicine, but, in fields like communication, computer sciences, and this is a good example of, really putting to work everything from the fundamental physics, all the state-of-the-art light, and supramolecularly organized, we call it like that, light. How do you actually think that your research is going to impact the field, or what you guys think that it's gonna look like in 5 years from now?
All right. So photonics will be, which of course this quantum communication is a part of photonics technology, is the technology of 21st century. There is no doubt that that will be the only path that we will go through. Okay, this is the only path that we will go through, and we have already seen that even in the 20th century. So we had fibers, which changes completely the communication infrastructure. We had solar cells, we had CCD cameras, and many other innovation in photonics. Even the 2015 was named as the year of light. So security and safety, as well as health, always are needed in humankind. So we are fighting to get a better health system. We are fighting to get a better, safe, and secure way of communicating, using credit cards, using communication, and etc. So, and photonics is needed there. This one way that you can communicate is only photon. Is the only way. If you want to see objects, you have to use light, and there is no other way. Of course, electrons also is a wave, but people, what they use it in is microscopes. So I would say in next 5 years, the revolution will start slowly. It requires attention of governments, different governments all around the world, and also industry partners. It started in China. Right now, they moved to quantum communications. It's not something that it comes to your home right away, but it will be there slowly, but surely. So yeah, I would say in next 5-10 years, we are expecting that quantum networks will appear around the world in different places.
This is fantastic. Like what I can say is like I have learned so much in less than an hour, and thank you again for taking the time doing this, and and the most important thing is that the messaging here is that we have an excellent researcher, an excellent team of actually working in quantum information and structured light, that we learn what structured light is. That like all your examples, they're really easy to understand, which is great to hear that. And just thank you again, and making sure that we also thanks to all those supporting this radio show, I call it. as University of Ottawa, Hart Institute, eLife, the Canadian Biomaterials Society student chapter, and the Department of Biochemistry, Microbiology, and Immunology at University of Ottawa, the Faculty of Medicine. And thank you again, Ebrahim. It was really a pleasure. And we're looking forward to seeing more of your research coming out and learning more and more about quantum computing and communication, that we are all using communication these days. The faster the speed of the internet in the future, these communications are going to be even more effective.
Thank you very much, Emilio. Thanks a lot for having me in your interview. And also, I would like to thank all of my collaborators, my students. There are a lot. I'm afraid to name them because I'm sure that I will miss many of them. So, and thanks a lot.
Thank you again, and see you guys next time in another episode of Research Biz Radio. And stay tuned because we have more, exciting interviewers coming. Thank you so much. Have a good day.